on that application. As a courtesy to her, I'm going to make a motion that we reopen this hearing. Have a second on that?
I'll say.
Second by Frank, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have unanimous opening of that. Now, that would be you. Ma'am, why don't you come on up here and state your name and then... Now, as you know, we had this hearing last month, and being the first time we had a 5 o'clock meeting,
I
we
understand.
had it down to 7, so we want to make sure that you have your day in court, so to speak.
I appreciate the courtesy that has been extended to me.
Excuse me, ma'am, what is your name?
Patricia Juskowitz, I reside at 55 White Oak Lane, West Hampton.
Thank you.
Now, where exactly are you located, in relation to the application?
I believe it's, what number is this? 45.
45? She's 45, the applicant's 45.
I believe there's one,
The house, and then there's a driveway, then there's her house.
So you're on the west side?
If you'd like to,
yes.
Okay.
this is you right here, right? It's not your entire lot. Here's Mr. McBride in the house, there's a driveway, and then...
Yes.
She's, where are we? Mr. McBride is here, there's a house, there's a driveway, and her house is around the corner.
Okay.
Around the corner. Yeah.
Joe, do you want to see that?
Yeah, thank you.
Great.
I'm objecting to this, to the petition, based on the fact that all of the other homes on that street are in conformity, to my knowledge, with the zoning regulation. This petition asks for variances on all sides of the property and asks for, I believe it's, what is it, a 5% increase?
The lot coverage was going to be
Yeah.
up to 4.2% increase in lot coverage.
I was rounding.
You rounded up, huh? Okay.
In this particular case, I particularly object to the garage, to the request concerning the garage. I had made a similar request and petition to the board several years prior to this and was denied, based on the fact that I had a garage. And in this case, it is the same situation. There is an existing garage. And I wouldn't object other than the fact that I had been denied. And I think that the rules have to be applied.
Did you apply for a
Fairly.
variance for that?
Yes,
And you were denied the variance?
I was denied the...
And what was the basis of the denial for the variance?
I didn't go through the process of looking through all of my paperwork. My recollection is I had done the renovation in several stages. And the first stage, I simply renovated the house, thinking that was what I wanted to do. And coming from the city, I was sure that I really didn't need a garage because I never had one before. And then after residing in the house for 3 or 4 years full-time, I found that I did need it. The winters were just too difficult. And so I applied for a variance to add a garage to the side of my house where there was a side entrance. And I don't remember the amount of lot coverage that it extended on the east side of the property. And many neighbors objected to that. And they have a right to object to that. And therefore, it was denied.
We didn't, that variance wouldn't have been denied just based on neighbors objecting to it. We have a balancing test that we would do. Paul, do you remember this? I vaguely
remember, but I
remember.
seem to remember that
There was a
what happened
side
was,
part.
didn't you renovate your garage that was there and turned it into habitable space at some point?
That's what I said.
Right, and then you then went to add another garage alongside that, and I believe it was a side yard variance in
Right.
addition to lot coverage. Maybe it was lot coverage, but I know it was a side yard variance.
No, oh, you're right, there was no variance for lot coverage.
Side yard.
It was a side yard
And the board
issue.
said she was asking for a substantial side yard variance when in fact she had earlier renovated the garage that was already there into habitable space and caused the hardship. I think that was the gist of
It was.
what they
He is
said.
Weren't
correct.
they able to put the garage in the front also, in another spot?
I think there was
Tested my
another,
memory, you know.
there might have been another spot someplace else, but it was quite a few years ago, like
Yeah, it was.
8 years ago.
I couldn't put it in the front because I had already renovated the house. And so there was a door on the side to a, what do they call that? I call it the laundry room or the mud room. And so I asked for the variance to put it there. I don't think it was particularly substantial. I don't think it was more than, well, it wouldn't have been percentage because it wasn't a lot coverage issue. It was how close, it was a side yard variance. And, I mean, I complied and I put the garage in a place that complied with the zoning
So
regulations.
you do have the garage.
I
We
did.
were able to put the garage in a conforming location. That's what I remembered about that. Okay.
However,
What was the number of your house again?
it's 55.
55.
However, the conforming location meant that there was a considerable distance to walk. And the hardship for me was that my partner was very ill and later became even more ill. He's now deceased.
I'm sorry.
And so that was a very substantial hardship for him and therefore for me. And as I said, I conformed to what the board asked, but I think similar situations deserve similar decisions. And since there is a garage that exists in that space, I see no reason for a variance in this case. That's the end.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Jim, do you have anything that you need to add to this, this hearing?
Well, I will rely on the presentation I made last time for the basis for the variance. From what she's described, I think that what we're looking for and why we're looking for it is completely different from her situation. She obviously had a conforming location where she could do the same thing, and I'm not sure we have the same circumstance. She's, as to her own testimony, she's 2 or 3 houses away from us, and our construction is on the side of the lot that is furthest away from the house. So I don't see how she can be impacted in any way, shape, or form. And I'm sure the board remembers that the public benefit that my client provided with the drainage that he installed on the road in return for the prior variance, which he did not take advantage of. So I think all of those things contributed to the granting of the last variance, and hopefully will contribute to the granting of this variance.
Okay, Jim, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just add, there is only one house separating my home from his, not several.
Can I see that?
And
Mhm.
And I think it is similar since there is an existing garage.
Okay. Terrific, thank you. Is there anybody else on this application? No, so I'd like to, if the board is okay with it? You guys all right? All right, so I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and close this hearing now for a determination at next month's meeting.
Second.
Should I stamp this? Now, you doing the stamping here? You doing this?
Yeah.
You're doing this cool thing. You're gonna trust me with a stamp. I'm just gonna stamp everything. Thanks.
All in favor?
So I'll make a motion to close this for determination. Second by Joe, all in favor? Okay, next on our agenda here is Levinson, 416 Dune Road. The applicant requests variances to raise an existing dwelling, install a septic system in additions and alterations to the existing dwelling. The deck is being constructed 17.1 feet from the north lot line. Deck shed and outdoor shower located 10 feet from the east lot line. When 20 is needed, fills being placed on the lot line on the south and west side of the property. The only 727D requires 10 feet. Lot coverage being proposed at 24.5 and 197.10C allows a maximum of 20%. And the decks, shed, and outdoor shower on the east side of the property are not in the rear yard as required by 197.35A of the village code. Yeah.
Good evening, Diane Carroll, for Town Engineer, 11 416 Dune Road. The board asked for a number of pieces of paper at our last meeting. The first thing, which even is not part of our application, I thought that I'd like to clear up the height issue that has been brought up by the neighbors and the board. So if you look at the drawing that I provided, these are 3 projects I've worked on over the years. On Pond Point, you know, along that same stretch of land. And I want to point out that number 410, which I think some of the people have referred to, was built in 2005. At that time, all of Pond Point was in the BE zone, which meant we had to lift the houses to the required elevation to the bottom of the lowest structural member. And therefore, the finished floor of that house is now 12.6. Many of the houses that I lifted on the northern part of Pond Point also have a similar situation. That was years ago when all of Pond Point was a BE zone. Now it's an AE zone, and at 408, I came before this board in 2015, and you approved the variance that we had. The FEMA elevation was AE7. That means we had a 2-foot freeboard. Finished floor is elevation 9. Now I'm before this board for a house that is 2 houses away from that house, at 416 Dune Road. There have been 2 changes for 408 and 416. One was that FEMA changed their maps so that I just described, we're now in AE zone, but also the datum has changed. It's not 1929 anymore, it's 1988. And that has affected about a foot has affected the elevations. So in this case, not only do we have the 2-foot freeboard, but we also have the limb wall line, which means we have to go up an additional height to get to the bottom of the lowest structural member. So I want to confirm, everybody thinks we're raising this house 12 feet. This is not the case. I know that there have been all sorts of comments. The elevation is going to be elevation 11. So it's pretty much between the heights of the 2 buildings, that one in front of it and one next to it, 2 houses away. So I want the board to be very clear on this. Are we okay?
Okay. I'm okay.
Oh, okay, I want to nod.
Or not, some kind of recognition.
Some kind of regular, yes, something that says we're paying attention. All right, I'm asking you to share because these drawings are fairly large. I did submit this drawing on Monday, but I know not all of the board members have had a chance to look at it. I have to change my letter. It's actually 21 properties that are shown on these drawings. One is along Bourne Road and one is going up Harbor Road. And these properties are within the 200-foot radius. They're similar in size, they're similar in nature, they have the same setbacks that are required. So we feel that our project will be shown that it conforms to what the existing properties are there. The first issue is the deck being 17.9 feet from the north property line. I'd like to point out that the adjoining properties.
Where are we? Which one are we looking at?
Number 59.
59.
Yeah, I did it by tax map numbers.
59 right here, right?
Okay.
Okay.
And that's how I'll be referring to some of the things. It's by the tax map number that I put inside each house. Okay, now, look a little bit. You'll
Which house is
notice-
yours again?
What?
Let me get your house again. Oh, 59,
59.
that is yours, okay, that's confused me.
59 is, it's sort of in the middle of everything. And that's what I'd like to point out, that the two houses to the west have a 6-foot deck from the property line and a, what was the other one? 3 or 4 feet, probably. On the other side, we have two properties farther west that have 11.1 and 8.2. Those are properties on the east side of the property, and the largest properties way to the east have 7.7 and 8.8. So if you draw a line across this whole map, you'll see that our property at 17.9 is considerably behind the adjoining properties and also properties that are farther west and east of it. So we feel that 17.9 is not an over request for the setback. Does the board have any questions on that part of it? Okay. Then the fill placed within 10 feet of the property line. There are already 3 properties along this area that have had fill for the sanitary system. This will be the 4th one on this stretch of Dune Road. But you'll notice that on the north end of Pond Point, there are a number of raised sanitary systems where houses have been renovated. There's more renovation going on that section. So we feel the fill is something that Suffolk County Department of Health Services requires, and we're complying with that. We ask the board to agree with us on that request.
Are those examples of fill right up to the property line?
Yes, a lot of them are. Yes, definitely, yes. Even on the north section, they're right along the road. Yeah, there's one here on Harbor Road that I've shown on my diagram. You'll see the one here, number 48. You'll see that 57 has it. There's a retaining wall at 52, but it's not on the property line. These properties, they're only 60 feet wide. It's very hard to fit a sanitary system. We're now using the leaching galleys, which give us less height to the system, and therefore we can get the 2 foot that we require to the groundwater. So it's become a challenge trying to get permission on this particular case, and also on number 57. I had to get a variance from Board of Health because we have to park on top of the sanitary system. So that makes it even more complicated. We go through a big process trying to get to this point, to put the fill 10 feet off the property line.
So you're saying you have approval to park on the, you were able to get approval to park on top of the sanitary?
You pay $990 and they review it and they give it to you.
Really?
Yeah.
900, yeah, well, it's less than 1,000.
Well, my clients asked me, I said it's extortion, but, you're able to do something, so, So,
That's interesting. I didn't know that you could actually.
well, what happens, there were so many board reviews,
They're starting to do that.
they just said, we know that you need to do it, because there are a lot of properties like this. So, and I'm sure the board has seen them up and down Dune Road.
We're starting to see that. You're parking on top of it, they have to
Yeah.
get variance from the health department to do it, right, Paul?
Yes, yes. They have to be engineered for it, but they are.
The leaching galleys are actually rated for traffic banning, which is why we use them as opposed to using the round systems that you usually see. It's very expensive for those round covers. The leaching galleys have become very popular because of their low height. And if you notice on number 57, you can see the design of the leaching galleys if you're interested. And you can see that I had to get a variance because I need a 10-foot setback to the retaining wall. I don't even get that. But the health department does approve it because they realize they want the improvement to the sanitary systems as well as, of course, the village. Okay. The next thing is the 20% lot coverage. If you look, I have been very careful to list all of the properties where I was able to. You'll see that it says either from the survey, because I was able to get surveys that did show lot coverage. The other ones where it says calculated, I did the calculations based on the properties. And 13 of the 21 are over the 20%, so that's a very good number that shows that there are quite a few. Also, we feel that with the range, some of them are 22%, there's a 30%, 27%. Next door, there's a 27.4%. Farther west, it's 26.9%.
I was gonna say, all the properties adjacent to that
Are over, yeah.
are over.
Over, so we feel that our request is within reason. It's sort of in the middle of all of the different numbers. So it is 24.5%.
Were you decreasing
We are
by a
decreasing.
little bit? You were
I
bringing
know. I'm
4%, 5%
taking,
or something like
yeah,
that?
easily, because
What is it now? What's the existing lot coverage now? It's
29.
about 29?
oh, thank you, Paul.
29.3.
29, so you're gonna bring down 24?
Yeah. Now, what I did was I took off the shed that was on the side, on the west side of the building.
You took it off.
I took that, that's gone.
Good job.
And what I did also is when I met you last month, we had to take 3 feet off the deck that's on the north side because the DEC said that it had been built illegally. So
Uh-huh.
to get the DEC permit, we had to remove 3 feet of the entire width of that deck.
Was it 4 feet, Diane? Was it 4 feet, not 3?
Was it 4? I haven't read the DEC lately.
Yeah.
It's 3 or 4 feet. It was a considerable number.
Yeah, in fairness, as you're going through this, most of these properties that you talk about lot coverage, that's over, it's 24, 25, 26, 27, they're pre-existing non-conforming, situations. Just
Well, we had
just
a
to point out.
pre-existing non-conforming situation also with this property.
No, well, that's why you're here, I
Yes.
understand that, but, what I'm saying is, the ones that you're pointing out are also, pre-existing non-conforming. It's just a point.
Yeah, they are. In fact, most of the section, that's why I took the time, because the board did ask for a streetscape, to go through all of the calculations for you so that when you review these drawings, you'll understand where we stand with, the relationship with the neighbors.
Well, it certainly points to the character of the neighborhood,
Yes.
I'll give you that.
Yes, thank you. And then the last item is X shed, an outdoor shower not conforming to the 20-foot setback, and also the, what's the other part of it? Oh, not the rear yard. So I would like to address that right now. There are a number of properties that have non-conformities. When you look at this drawing, you'll see that on 61, there's a hot tub that's 11.1 feet, there are sheds, there are bins, there are, well, the decks shouldn't even be an issue because all of the decks.
What shed are you taking away? You just said you were taking rid of the
There was a
shed.
shed, if you look at
Okay.
number
The shed-
59, on the west side, it says mechanical room. So what we're doing is we're asking permission to build what we're calling a shed, but it's not a shed, on the east side, and that was not in the rear yard. But I would like you to consider that it's more of a part of the house because it's going to hold the washer and dryer. It's going to be finished. It's also going to have the on-demand water heater. So it's connected by a deck, 2 decks actually, and a roof to make it look like it's part of the house. So we feel that it's the best solution for trying to provide all of the space that you need when you don't have a basement or a garage or an attic. Now, if you go to the east from this house, where the houses have been raised, you'll see that, well, quite a few in a row have garages or storage areas underneath because they've been raised because it was the VE zone. Now that it's an AE zone, you don't have that luxury of having the space. And that's why the house directly in front of us has a big storage space underneath. We don't have that advantage. So we're asking the board to consider giving us the space that we need to provide the mechanicals for this house.
Now, do I hear this correctly, that you're asking the board to look at the storage and the outdoor shower as part of the house and not an accessory structure?
Well, I'm asking the board to consider it, I'm not saying not an accessory structure, but I'm asking for the relief because there's a very good reason why we need the space. So I would say, yes, it's accessory, but it's also quite integral to the workings of the house.
Now, is that what was still open that you made at the last meeting, to take that away and just, keep, and just ask for the deck, up to 10 feet and remove the outdoor shower and the storage space?
Well, I was originally going to do that, but my clients would prefer to continue with this part of the application. And when I was speaking to Paul, I met him after this meeting, and he felt that that really didn't help because it didn't move it into the rear yard and it didn't move it to the 20 feet away. So, there wasn't really much of a point for me to do it.
Okay. And interesting, back here, if, spoke to Paul earlier today also, because in this R5 zone, technically, you could build your home within 10 feet of each side yard.
Yes.
So it's only the accessory structure, part of the code that keeps you 20 feet away.
Well, I asked my client if they would like to enclose the space between what we're calling the shed and the house. They said they prefer this design, but if it's a backup position, we would be willing to make it part of the house to have the 10-foot.
Okay.
And then we'd still ask for the right to have the deck on the east side. Yes.
We're talking about the east side.
Yes, we're talking
Right.
about the east side,
Right.
but what I'm saying is that I'd have the 10 feet, it would be for a house, but we'd like to have the walkway be within the, like the 10 to 15 foot, in other words, switch the shed, put it next to the house, and still
Oh,
have
I
the
see,
walkway
okay,
go
just
through.
swap it, okay.
Just swap,
I
yes,
understand.
thank you, that's
Okay.
exactly what I'm
Okay, I
looking
got
at. Okay.
Okay,
So yes, that is a consideration.
okay.
As I said, my client preferred, they like the aesthetics of the house better, but that's not something the board is interested in.
Okay,
But we'd like the board to consider granting this variance for us.
okay.
Any other questions, gentlemen? I think the streetscape was a good idea. I think you mentioned it.
Well, thank you. I knew it took a lot of work, and I appreciate
It did, but
that.
I have to thank Carrie and Megan. They pulled a lot of the service for me, and it made it much easier for me to come before this board, and when I come again, I'm ready. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the gentleman on the east side has, the one who's going to be affected by what I call the shed, has written a letter to the board, I believe you have it in your file, that he's in favor of it.
Is the east side house the one that you're gonna need to come back to us for, yeah, so that really
Right,
got
right,
it, you
and
know,
all that
yeah.
stuff, yeah.
Of course he's gonna support you, right? Huh? Oh, good point.
Well,
Yeah,
I
so
tried to
he's-
do a good job, so.
All right,
yeah.
so he's all in favor of it, because he's gonna be here.
Yes,
in the next couple
yes,
months.
because somewhat of an ulterior motive.
yeah.
It's not going to be a couple months, we got to go to Board of Health,
Mm-hmm.
so, I'm going to not be here for another like 3 months.
Now, one last thing, some of the comments from the neighbors as far as the activity, coming and going, during the construction. I know that's not part of what we're here, for, but
I understand.
it was brought up, and what are your thoughts?
We're very careful. The house is actually moved to the dock, well, not the dock, but the, excuse me, the bulkhead, and sometimes it even goes past the bulkhead, so that we have room for the pile driver and the trucks to park on the property. The neighbor next door has offered his property, so we'll be using his driveway. So it would be nobody parking in the access driveway, even though it's the two houses that are the only ones affected. But no, I've done a lot of work down there in Pond Point, and we've always been very careful about that.
Okay.
I haven't had complaints anyway.
No, I just wanted to address it because
No, I think
the
you should-
neighbors were concerned, that's all.
And I can see why,
Yeah.
but if they have someone parking on their property or in the driveway that they use, they certainly can call code enforcement and request that it be
Our
removed.
code enforcement officer is so overworked as it is, Diane, we don't want to put that on her.
Well, she can call me. I just go down, excuse me, the elephant.
No, but we, all joking aside, I don't like to create that condition if we.
No, I'm very
No,
careful
so,
about that.
yeah.
The contractor is very good, he's the same one that worked at 408.
Well, I think that if you have the neighbor to the east there that's gonna be doing something, he's gonna be more than willing to let.
Oh, no, he's fine with it, I've already
somebody
discussed that
come
with
in
him.
and
Yeah,
do some of his property for it.
and we'll show him the same courtesy when he's
Yeah.
ready to do it, so
Yeah.
I don't see any problem.
And I'm
with
sure,
it.
as far as construction goes, I mean, any construction down there, whether even if it's a construction and no variance is needed, it's still gonna create a problem because it's such a small,
It's a very
They're-
tight site, they're all tight sites.
they're all tight.
Yes,
Down in Pond
I
Point,
understand,
they're
but
all
over the
Okay.
years, we've raised a lot of houses down there. and we haven't had this problem. So I thank the board.
thank you.
Thank you,
All
John.
right, gentlemen, you have any other questions for Diane? Okay, so neighbors, come on now. Just if you would, tell us who you are and where you
I'm
are.
Mary McCarthy, I live at 422, that's to the west.
Mhm.
That's where she wants to take the 10-foot side and get rid of that, right?
I'm sorry, say that
And the
again?
10-foot between myself and her, she wants to get rid of that and put fill there, all right?
Okay, so she wants to put, the health department regulations require fill.
All right.
Okay, now, the code, our code says you can't put it within 10 feet of the property line without variance, but there's, in Palm Point, you look around Palm Point, and there's many houses that have to have the fill variances to go closer than 10 foot.
But there's no other, it has to be on my line then.
It's-
The way I see it, I have the fence down, fences make good neighbors,
Mhm.
right? And I have my vegetation, all that. See, what happened before, when the people behind me put that big house up, we kind of didn't know what's going on, and then I put all those trees in front of it to mask it, so I'm a little leery of property lines, and that happened. So what I see is I have a fence, and they have their side, I have my side.
Yeah.
That fence is going to be gone. and it's
Is the
gonna
fence
be-
on your property?
I think it's on theirs property, I'm pretty sure.
Then it could be gone.
Okay.
If it's on their property, it can,
Right, so
it can
then-
be.
So then, well, whether fence, the bulkhead will come right up to the property line then?
Well, the retaining wall.
Right.
How does that mean?
Yeah, is there a picture that everybody's looking at that I can see, or is that anything that?
This is just kind of surveys, but
Oh, okay.
I'm gonna ask Diane to address that for you. She can answer it better, right? Yeah, and would you do that?
Go ahead.
Clear up her question.
Okay,
We'll clear it
what's
up for
going to
all of us.
happen is if The fence is yours.
I think
and
it's theirs, I'm not sure.
Then they're probably going to replace it. There are two things that are going to happen. One is the retaining wall is not exactly on the property line because I have to put a footing in. I have to keep the footing on our property.
Right.
So there's usually about a foot, plus or minus, that the retaining wall goes up. The ARB frequently asks for some sort of a planting or blah, 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 whatever they want. So that would happen.
Or a finished wall, Diane. A lot
Yeah,
of times
finished
there's not
wall,
really
yes.
room to put planting on their property, so they finish it with stone or stucco or something else
Right.
and make it look nice.
And this is not a high wall. I know it seems scary. It's probably about 30 inches. If I go higher than that, I have to put a guard on it so that you don't fall over the 30 inches. So we try and keep it down low. Once the contractor's there, they do a very good job of setting all of the leaching galleys and the retaining wall.
Okay.
There's 408's a perfect example. It's beautiful. So if the board has some questions about that before they make their decision, they're more than welcome to go down there and look at that property.
So this is, the board is like, it looks like it's almost, if this is the property line, it looks like there's something in between that and the wall, is that right? See, like, is this the property line?
That's the property line, there's the wall. Yeah, so it's set in.
No, but that beige, this thing here, is there anything?
The long skinny thing is the retaining wall.
Oh, okay. And what is this thing here then?
That's the driveway where the stacked stone is.
Oh, okay. And there's a, whatever's in there.
You're missing.
So we're getting rid of all that stacked stone, so actually, the retaining wall, this is where their planting is, and this is where their retaining wall is, that stacked stone is. So you're actually gonna see a retaining wall that's closer, but it drops off.
So this dotted one is the existing one?
That's the existing,
And that's gone?
that's gone.
Is there any opportunity to actually pull it off a property line at all? I mean, are you,
It is off the private, but
no, I'm saying like, move it more off the
the
property.
Board of Health has given me a variance for specific dimensions off the house and off the property lines. So I'm basically stuck with what they've said because with sanitary systems like rule. So I have to work with that.
Sure.
So I just have views that the wall comes down and everybody's spilling back and forth and back and forth
Wait a minute.
in the
wait a minute.
construction.
Oh, no, they don't. They're driving up the driveway and they're parking here. They're not spilling over. They're not going to be on your property.
But you know,
This is not your property where those
no,
plants
no,
are.
here I'm talking about.
Oh, here.
In other words, this comes down, they're automatically, with all the things going on, never gonna go over there. What used to be,
You
this
can
used
mark
to
it.
be.
You can,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
used to be
No, no, no.
is not
But
happening
no, but
anymore.
that's what I'm trying to explain. What used to
Yeah.
be was driving through there, and that's where they put the wall up. It's a natural thing to go over there, and I just, because I have plants along there, and I really worry that when the fence comes down, what they're doing is, they're just gonna go over. That's what I'm thinking, that's all.
Well, there's a retaining wall there.
Yeah.
So they're not, and their driveway's going to end.
The retaining wall's gonna be there for the construction, right?
It's a structure, it's a functional structure.
Yeah.
So it's,
So you don't have to worry about that aspect.
Yeah.
That should be okay.
So
What other
it-
concerns do you have?
Well, the concern is, so if everybody does something wrong, pre-conforming, non-conforming, then everybody can keep, they'll keep doing it.
No. If they could keep doing it, they wouldn't be here tonight.
But that's what she was saying. In other words, this one did it wrong, that one did it wrong, so now I can do it
It
wrong.
doesn't mean that they were doing it wrong. For whatever reason, they were
Right.
either built before the code changed or before the code was in effect, or they got variances for it. So nobody could just do whatever they want and do it wrong, and, you know, so that's why we're here tonight.
Yeah.
Can I have that
Is there a
back?
picture of the height,
That survey, our survey fidelity.
cheers.
For the height of the wall?
for the height of the house? Remember, I was concerned about 410, because 410 is way up there.
Because 410 really doesn't matter because
just
Diane
show her
did
that?
address that already.
I don't have mine.
You can take a look at this,
Just
ma'am,
take a
if you
look
like.
there.
The one to the one on the left,
Oh, okay, so,
This is
This-
410.
on the right,
Okay.
I'm
This is
sorry.
408.
We also have, for everybody who knows, you know, there's height requirements in the code, and this house is well within the height requirements. So it's not going over that, so the idea of having a castle there,
well, this was a concern,
good.
because if you,
But
it's not going to
I
be that
explained
way.
that at the beginning of my,
yeah, that's not gonna happen.
that it was a VE zone, and we didn't have choices. It was the same as what was north a view onto the peninsula, the Pond Point, where all those houses are so high.
Yeah.
This was the same FEMA zone at the time this house was built.
Oh,
What are your
so
ceiling
don't go
heights?
that high.
What are the ceiling heights?
It's a little less than 8 feet on the first floor, and it'll be 8 feet on the second floor.
Yeah.
So it just makes it, but you know,
I
I go
don't
to
think I know what that-
ARB, and they always say, why do we have all these flat roof houses down there? And it's because of the 20-foot
Yeah.
height limitation. So you're looking at two boards that are, you know, and I don't like asking for a height because I realize that there are views involved and people are, you know, when you're the second in the line, you can lose your view, but it's nicer not to have it blatant.
So her
look at that.
finished floor is set because FEMA is telling her it's gotta be at a certain elevation.
And that's
then
what
from
happened
there,
with
she has 2
410.
8-foot,
And this is what the
Floors.
house is gonna look like.
That's that one.
See, this one, I guess the problem is that the deck goes out the back and it's higher, and believe me, you hear everything if it goes on there. You know, this is.
You know, you live in a beach
You
community.
gave
and you
them a
live on-
variance
on
to increase that,
slopes. What's that?
you gave them a variance to
Yeah.
increase that second floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's,
This is the.
But you know, when you're living on a beach community, you
This is-
have
this is
very
life.
close, you gotta be friends with your neighbors.
We are!
Well, see, then it's
That's
a
why we're not to have unfriendly
Say,
stuff.
yeah, why don't you have a party on the deck, you just gotta go over there and have a party with them.
well, with 410,
You can't,
you don't have a yard when you're on, when you're up off the ground. You don't have a yard. So you've got to have a deck, because what are you going to do? You're going to make your friends walk down a full
See that?
flight of stairs to party.
if you wanna have it quiet, no noise, I guess you gotta
No,
look
I'm
at
not
it.
saying that. They're the only one in the whole area that you hear, that's the only reason why.
It's always
Have
gonna be one.
kids. The kids will grow up.
What other questions might you have?
That's it.
No other concerns, good. Is there anybody else out there that has any concerns about this application tonight? Anybody's waiting for something else here, huh? Okay. Gentlemen, you have any other questions for our architect here? No? Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that we close this hearing for determination at December meeting.
Second.
Second by Joe, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Put this in. Our next, let's see, we're on new applications. Our next application is number 6 on our agenda tonight. Doug and Barbara J. Keel, 32 White Oak. Applicant requests an area variance to construct a swimming pool which is not located in the rear yard in violation of Chapter 19735A of the Village Code.
Good evening, for the applicant, James Van Hulen, 323 Mill Road, West Hampton.
Jim, before we get started, we have to touch on something.
Okay,
Apologize.
I didn't do it.
No, you didn't do it, I'm sure it wasn't your fault, but here's the thing, on your application,
Yes,
there was a previous variance on this property. The application says there wasn't, and it's not listed, so I'm gonna think of what we should do is go ahead with the presentation tonight, but I would think it's gonna have to have a re-advertisement, so we're not gonna be able to close it tonight.
okay.
Okay, I
We advertise the fact that there was a prior variance?
Yeah,
What was it
basically,
for?
that's, you missed the variance, and we,
I did.
yes, you did.
That was my fault.
And, I hate the porch. It's here, but it was that enclosed,
Okay.
porch in the rear yard. And because you have that porch in the rear yard, is why you're here tonight with an application for a swimming pool.
That is true.
Okay? So that has to get fixed, but in fairness, I think, that's not his mistake, but I think we could go ahead and hear everything.
Okay, well,
We're just not gonna
we'll-
close it tonight, we'll have to keep it open for all purposes. You wanna hold on to that, or?
If I could.
You can hold on to that,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
And with that said, we can go ahead.
Okay. Yes, this is 32 Red Oak Lane. It's a, what's the other property? Almost 22,000 square foot lot. It was, the original house was built in 1959.
So this is one of those two front yard houses?
Yes, and it's a corner lot. So that's
Designated the rear yard to be like
And
this.
so my applicants, the owners, would like to see if they could fit an appropriately sized pool. And that's what we're here for. The pool is depicted as 16 by 40. We've kind of tucked it into the, next to the porch, so that we're minimizing the variances that we're seeking, although there's a neighbor here who's going to have some thoughts about that, which may lead us to a different direction for the location of the pool, but we'll get to that a little bit later. When the house was constructed, and actually, well, let me do it this way. In 1959, the house was owned by a woman by the name of Margaret Lynch. In 2012, Margaret Lynch transferred the property to her daughter, Barbara Gentile, and then in 2017, Barbara transferred it to herself and her husband, Doug. So that's how we end up with them being the applicant. So there were no arm's length transactions from 1959 to today. It was just estate planning, family transfer. If we had come to build this pool before 2003, I don't think we would need a variance at all. And I've provided you with a copy of Local Law 1 of 2003, which represents the change that took place that resulted in, ultimately resulted in 19735A. Well, no, I'm sorry, ultimately resulted in this not being the rear yard where we're proposing the pool. If you looked at that, or even if you didn't, what it said was that if you were on a corner lot, you had the privilege of electing the street lot line as the front lot line, but there shall be provided a side yard equal to the depth of the required front yard on the side street. Why that's important is because if you look at the definition of side yard, the side yard extends from the front yard to the rear yard. It doesn't extend all the way to the property line, whereas the rear yard extends from property line to property line. So prior to 2003, this pool would be in the rear yard because the rear yard would have extended along the back of the house from the southern border all the way to South Road under the code that existed now. Now, what the change that was made in 2003 was that instead of calling that second yard, the second street front yard, a side yard with a front yard setback, it was changed to call it a front yard. And by definition, a front yard extends from property line to property line. So under the section of the code that existed when this house was constructed, the rear yard would have been here, and then the rear yard would have been all of this. And then there would have been a side yard here that had to have a 50-foot setback. After 2003, when the law changed, this became a front yard, which would have extended from here to here, thus making this part of what used to be a rear yard now side yard. And since it's a side yard, you can't have a pool.
Isn't, the way I read that was that the enclosed porch extending back is what the reason you need.
Well, I think it's really, well, no, because the yard extends from the street to the furthest part of the house. So everything behind, but, so I was really thinking that this is clearly in the front yard under this half of the pool is clearly in the front yard.
But this right here has a certificate of occupancy.
You're correct, so then this little bit here.
This little bit
plus,
here.
Well, no, this little bit here, plus all of this is not in the rear yard.
Okay, so
Because this is, by the change in the definition, this entire section here, from here to here, is front yard. From there to there.
Mr. Chairman, this might help you a little bit. I don't follow that, Jim. I don't think that the change from 2000.
I guess either way, we need a variance. So.
Yes. Any difference with the back of the house became the wall of the enclosed porch. So.
Right, no,
so the rear yard still would have been from that point back.
Right.
So you would have needed a definition, and you would have needed a variance even under the old way the definition read.
More of the pool would be in the rear yard.
Because you weren't that far. You just said earlier that you wouldn't need a variance under that definition. That's not true. You would absolutely need, I mean, that really.
But in order to minimize the variance that we are looking for, we put the pool in that location, because part of it is in fact in the rear yard. And under the old definition, part of it was in the rear yard, but now is not in the rear yard.
When was the portion closed? Was it before or after?
1996.
Yeah.
So it was before all that.
It was before '03. That was also before '03. So the house in its current form existed before the law changed. So under the current definition, more of the pool is not in the rear yard than would have been before. So it would have been a smaller variance. But the fact remains is that there's not really any rear yard to put this pool in.
Is the variance here that you're requesting is only for the portion of the pool that's not in the rear yard?
Correct.
There's nothing to do with lot coverage,
No.
there's nothing to do with setbacks?
No.
Okay?
If you tell those, it doesn't.
You alluded to the fact that you might try and put it someplace else based on a neighbor.
Yeah, I'll get to that in just a minute.
Those neighbors.
And just, the board has on other occasions, under different circumstances, granted, but on other occasions, when there was no rear yard to put a pool in, have granted relief to put a pool someplace other than in the rear yard. And the two that come to mind are Greg Manasian and
I've had a couple of unique ones.
Finlayson. Now, those ended up in what were side yards, not what's a front yard, but it's a front yard by virtue of all of these roads. So it's a similar kind of thing. And the underpinning for both of those, I think, those determinations was there was no rear yard to put pool in.
Do you have anything on those?
I have copies of both of them, if you'd like them. I only have one copy, but I'm happy to make it part of the record. Sure. So, that, as far as that goes, that's the relief that my clients are looking for. Now, I heard from the neighbor directly to the east. And if you...
Michael Mopson?
Yes, and he's, I don't want to speak too much because he is represented by counsel tonight. But just to orient you as to where he is.
Across the street?
No, he's to the right.
He's behind, right?
No, well, he's on South Road, right behind us.
Okay.
He's right here.
Sure.
Let's
see, thank you.
He's the house to the right of our house. Is it something I said?
He said he had enough.
Well,
Just kidding, Jim.
So, and I think the concern that they'll express is if we put the pool in the spot where we're proposing, it's, I think there are bedrooms on this side of the house. Oops, here. But to put it anywhere, to move it anywhere else increases the variance that we're going to require. We are, as you pointed out, 20 feet from the...
So you're conforming locations as far as
Yes.
setbacks?
As far as setback goes.
Okay.
And the porch does in fact cut off some of our rear yard, but the code definition of 2 front yards is what really is the big driver here, and really is what's keeping us from pushing the pool any further north or west to get away from that particular neighborhood. So we're 20 feet away.
Jim, I haven't been into the backyard. I've looked from the street, and Google. How substantial is that porch and, enclosed porch?
I don't know. It's fairly substantial.
It's part of the house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't actually into the house. I mean, obviously that's an alternative, but that's an expensive alternative. We could take the porch off and move the pool.
That's actually,
That becomes an awfully expensive pool.
Okay.
The other interesting thing is if we put an addition on the north side of our house, the further north we went, the more rear yard we create.
So you can put an extension on your house, not need a variance for the pool.
Right. Again, a pretty expensive pool, and then you start having a house that's maybe bigger than is wise for, although we were at the other end of Red Oak Lane earlier tonight, so some pretty nice houses down that end. So that's really what I wanted to present. I would-
Good, because I'm curious as to what's happening with the neighbor.
Good evening, my name's Eric Bregman, I'm Farrell Fritz, I represent Mr. Mossad, who's to the east. I didn't see Jim's pictures, but I have two aerials to show you, which give you the...
Thank you. You want to see that? I mean, Jim's picture, I mean...
It's close enough to what I
Right,
have.
pretty much, the aerial's in there.
But I also have the second one. Second, the one shows the neighborhood more general. And the problem is that Mr. Nelson has no problem with the pool next door, right? The problem is if you look at his house, which is here,
Got it.
okay? Right on the west side of his house are the master bedroom and the guest bedroom.
Right there.
Right, close, here. Right next to where the pool's going to be, or closest to where the pool's going to be.
Okay.
All right, so that's the concern.
The concern is that the pool is going to be too close to his house.
Noisy and activity and right at the bedrooms, and that's the concern. So we had some suggestions to deal with that.
I think pass it down.
Yeah, we'll pass it down, it's good. Let me give to clerk. So there are two suggestions here. And you can see I put Mr. Muffson's house, where the end of his house where the bedrooms are, in yellow. And the two suggestions are, this is my doing, so I'm not a surveyor, but as close as I can. But one is to turn it 90 degrees, and that, as you see, would get it away from the direct line of the bedroom, the Muffson's bedroom. And the other, on the second page, is to keep it in the same orientation, but move it north. Again, would get it away from the bedroom windows. I understand this is a variance, would create a greater variance because more of the house would be in the front yard. But if you balance, but if you look at the overview, go to the second page of the aerials. You will see that putting it there, there's nobody adversely affected by moving the pool north, either with a 90-degree shift or without a 90-degree twist. It's very far away from anybody. Nobody's impacted any more than they would be. In fact, nobody's impacted much at all. And if you also look at the overview, one of the other reasons for the overview is to show that not everybody has a pool in the neighborhood, but there are a number of them. But they're all oriented towards either other pools or away from the house. There's none that's like right next to the bedroom or the equivalent of the bedroom in the general neighborhood. If you look at that. Jim was very candid with me. He said these look okay to him, but he hasn't been able to talk to his client. I just was retained yesterday, so we had 2 days ago. So he has reached out to his client, but hasn't been able to reach them. So my thought is that, I'm sorry.
I had to clarify something with the building inspector,
No,
because I think,
I shouldn't have been speaking with you, but I apologize.
go ahead.
So I was just saying that Jim had said that these look like okay solutions to him, but he has to check with his client to see obviously if they have any problem. My thought was, if they were going to agree to the change, or if you were going to suggest that they agree to it, that you probably have to renotice it, but you're renoticing it anyway, so it fits right in to where we are, right? And and we have to come back anyway because it has to be.
I'm not sure it has to be renoticed, the way our code is structured, it simply says that all accessory structures have to be 20 foot from any lot line.
The renoticing would be because of variance, not because.
No, but I'm just saying, we've been noticed being not in the rear yard, period.
If that's
What the code says, is all accessory structures in this R1 zoning district have to be 20 foot away from any lot line. And then it says, and they must be located in the rear yard. I'm not sure shuffling this around makes changes that any.
That's fine. I don't think it's a major change. And as I said, I don't think anybody's adversely affected, even if you agree with the changes that we're suggesting.
So you're saying, from the standpoint of quality of life for the Moxons in their master bedrooms, you're suggesting to Jim and his clients a couple of alternatives, but the variance remains that you'd be asking for.
Whether he'd be asking for.
Yes, that's exactly right. I mean, it's the, excuse me, it's the detriment to the neighbors caused by, I mean, if you grant the variance, I understand.
It's one of our 5 standards.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right.
And I understand that it meets the 20-foot setback from the east property line.
I think you're being pretty reasonable.
Then I'll shut up.
That's why I responded the way that I did.
Yeah.
So, again, we're not opposing the pool, it's just that this particular location and the particular circumstances of Mr. and Mrs. Thompson just clash. And there's a simple solution, a couple of simple solutions.
Jim, I don't see the dimensions on this pool, but it's like about a 50-foot pool?
It's 16 by 40, according to my scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
The way I see this one is that with the rear yard here, this really just moving the pool over a little bit is the same variance we're asking for, as Paul just said, and all we're doing is, you're still conforming to
But
the
the other
setbacks.
thing that concerns about moving it this far is I would think there's kind of a hard stop at 50 feet, because that's the required setback for the principal structure. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not.
Well, remember, the code, what the code says, and our code is a little bit different in the way it classifies it. It simply says the accessory structure must be 20 foot from any lot line. And then it says, and all accessory structures must be in the rear yard. So whether you're encroaching to a rear, to a side or front.
So is there no
that's not-
degree of, that it's either a variance or not?
Right.
But there's nothing that says 50 feet for the accessory structure in the side yard.
Well,
You can't have it in the side yard
once you
anyway,
get-
20 feet.
Once you get behind the porch area, then on a corner lot, we look at that 50-foot setback where you could put something, once you get behind the structure. But from the point of view of this variance, whether he pushes it towards the road a little more or not, you're still 20 foot away from all lot lines, and you're still not in the rear yard. And that's what we advertise for.
So the only thing was, if you pierce the front that's on the other road, I mean, technically it's the same variance, it's still in the front yard, but you're now creating a second front yard, which you're violating. So you're violating 2 front yards. If
No,
you pierce,
I don't think so. The code doesn't say, you can't be in, the code says you must be in the rear yard, and you must be 20 foot away from any lot line. So whether you're in the front yard or the side yard, or...
I get that that's, from a code standpoint, it's the same variance. I'm just saying there's a little bit of a difference to be piercing another yard
It may
on
be
top
that
of
there's
it.
nothing new that was right up in the advertisement.
True.
That's all. So the board might consider that and say, that's not right, but there's nothing...
No, just that the neighbors on the other side of the street might
on the
have
side yard also.
looked at this differently if they knew it was piercing that front yard as opposed to just, that's all I'm saying. It might be depriving them of the, it's like to them, it could be a bait and switch.
No, I'm sorry,
That's all.
out of town,
You
so.
could solve that by sliding down.
I know, that's kind of what I'm suggesting, actually.
That wouldn't make...
Keep it
That's
behind that front
I mean, that's,
yard mark.
Trying to
That's all.
balance it with the
Because
house.
I'm
we put it where we
We
put
can't
it.
close it tonight anyway,
Right.
so we could kind of flip this around a little.
I mean, and this was, I was just I was talking to Jerry about this, but it looks like this is kind of accomplishing what you're asking for more than the other.
Yes,
sketch.
that would be the preferred one. I feel.
Yeah, because you're pulling it farther away from the house, and I don't know how everybody else feels. I don't even know if, you know.
Well, we've dealt with this in fronts and side yards before.
It's not a
And it-
sports court.
Pardon me?
Bring that one up. You did.
But there's a good example, what we did to make it fit
Right.
into the neighborhood, because they could put it in a completely location.
Yeah, because that was actually the twist there. There was a conforming location that would have worked, except it really impacted the neighbors.
Yeah, so, you know,
So, you're right.
will it create an undesirable effect to the neighborhood?
Well, I can certainly, since we're coming back next month regardless, I can approach my clients about these alternatives, and
Okay.
assuming there's nobody else here on this one tonight
Well, we're gonna
that we need
find
to
out in a
accommodate.
moment.
Well, I would like you to formalize, the argument, that you made, with other applications, other variances that were granted besides in fronts. You mentioned,
I provided two.
okay, I haven't seen any.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, he had one, and he gave it to Bridget for the.
I had actually two of them, which I gave to Bridget. And they were both basically cases where there was no rear yard in which to put the pool.
And the one I believe was on Griffin with the sport court,
And then the sports car, I can make that, I
Okay.
can bring that next time.
Okay.
Because that was my case also.
No, I'm just wondering, Joe, I mean, you're the expert, can we minimize the pool is 40 feet, is that a standard pool?
I'll ask them about that too.
Yeah.
It's 16 wide. My understanding is 16 by 32.
Yeah, 16 by 32.
It's usually 20 by 40 or 16 by 32.
Right.
so.
32 is the minimum. I mean, you can go smaller, but
All right, so we can, I'll talk to them about that. I'll recommend that to them, so that we can minimize the entire
Okay,
impact. Then I'll talk to them about these two alternatives,
let's see how
and
we
we'll come, and I'll get something back to you.
the problem, this has so many implications, further on down the road. That's the problem
Yeah.
with something like this.
Yes, it is,
What make the uniqueness of the
the
property?
uniqueness is that there's no rear yard in which to place this structure. And it's a typical structure. It's not an untypical structure in this neighborhood or in this village. And in other similarly situated circumstances, this board is agree with that.
Bring them on.
Okay.
Bring them on.
I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, anybody else, this hearing is going to go over to next month. Is there anybody in the audience that does have any input on this one? No. Okay, so I'll make a motion that we hold this over for all purposes.
Second, yeah.
So we have a second by Frank.
All right.
In favor? Aye. Great.
Jim, to rectify that, not having the variance, should Jim refile the application with those checked off and the dates and everything before?
Yeah, and I gave him a copy of the variance, make it easy for him. Thanks to you, Paul, and help with that. There you go. Okay. Well, that's all the time we have tonight. Number 7 on our agenda is Empire Custom Homes LLC, 52 Hazelwood Avenue. The applicant requests the following variance to construct a new dwelling unit on a swimming pool. Front yard setback is proposed at 30 foot 5 inches, when 197B of the village code requires 40 feet. The rear setback is proposed at 18. Chapter 197D requires 40 feet. The swimming pool is now located in the rear yard, as required by 19735A, and the property is located in the R4 zoning district.
For the applicant, James Ingram, 323 Mill Road, West Hampton Beach. As indicated in the reading of the notice, this is a property located at 52A Hazelwood Avenue, which actually fronts on something known as Morris Court, which is a little road perpendicular to Hazelwood Avenue.
The property is located in the R4 zoning district. My clients purchased the property in August of this year. It's an 18,000 square foot lot. This lot was created by a subdivision that took place in 2008. At that time, the zoning code described a street as being 50 feet wide, and this street is not 50 feet wide, so there was a variance granted to allow the subdivision to go forward. But I believe there was also an expectation as part of that this lot, since it didn't front on a street, would be treated as a flag lot, and it would, when determining setbacks and things like that. And as we'll talk about in a minute, this level of construction, and maybe even a little bit more, would be possible without any variances at all if it were treated as a flag lot, with the front lot line being the eastern property line. However, in 2016, the definition of street was changed from 50 feet to 20 feet. So all of a sudden, Morris Court, which had not been considered a street under the village code, became a street, and therefore, based on its identity as a street, that's where the front yard was.
When was that changed?
2016.
16.
Yes, 2016. Yeah.
Who owns it?
It's a good question.
Is it Centerline ownership? Is it-
No, it's, I think it's a vestige of the original subdivision, and the title was never transferred out. But other than the width, it met the definition of a street under the old code, and now with the reduced width, it meets on all fours the definition of a street, which is, and this is a long, narrow property, and so it makes it difficult to, using Morris Court as the front yard, as the front lot line, you end up with a very narrow house if you meet we got a 100-foot wide width, and you have a 40-foot front yard and a 40-foot rear yard. That leaves you 20 feet of width for the building envelope, so you end up with a very narrow, very long building envelope, which would drive to an odd-looking house, I think.
So, I'm sorry, what's the front of the house then? What's it facing?
It's facing Morris Court, so under the current code, Morris Court is a street under the village code, and therefore the property line along Morris Court is the front yard. But in order to do something that meets the front and rear yard setbacks, you only end up with a 20-foot wide building envelope. The building envelope could be quite long, but you'd end up with a very long, very narrow structure with a lap pool behind it, or something of that nature. However, if I think that the spirit, if not the intent, when the property was originally subdivided, based on what the law was, that the owner of this lot would be able to choose which is the front lot line and which is therefore the rear, et cetera, et cetera. So if that were the case, and we chose the westernmost property line as the front lot line, we would immediately reduce, with this development, we would immediately reduce it from 3 variances to 1 variance. And if we slid the house back 10 feet, we would eliminate that variance as well. So I think that's the way that this property was intended to be developed. But the law changed, and that brings us here to seek the variances that we're seeking, a front yard and a rear yard. And because Morris Court became a street where the pool is, that would have been a rear yard, is now a side yard.
Yeah, these are those little roads down there in Hazel, which is kind of tucked away in there.
Correct. Which makes the whole thing unique.
It is unique, but I'm looking at this aerial photo, and putting a rear yard is only going to be 18 feet. The house is going to be 18 feet from the rear yard. Isn't that going to have kind of a big impact on the house to the north? Who's going to be on What is that?
Ligon Lane.
Ligon Lane.
Well, we can move the
You know what I'm
house,
saying?
we can move the house forward.
Here's my initial thing. We're gonna put a house, it's gonna be kind of in here. It's just kind of, it's tight to that.
Sure.
I don't know if those neighbors are here
We have
tonight, but
a 30-foot front yard plus a road before we get to the
Gotcha.
people to the south.
can this be positioned differently, because she's... This is kind of a fun one for you.
I just want to go through this, that change had no effect on what was the front of the lot line. This was, the lots off of these dirt roads, off of Hazelwood, they were never
always-
considered flag lots. They always came in to get road review. And the front yard was always, we have many of these that are out there, the front yard was always a dirt road. It was never intended for anything else, even in the subdivision. I believe during the subdivision, that they even discussed the fact that there was a small building envelope, and I think the building...
Well, I was on, of course, that, I was on the board back then. I remember, that much I remember.
Right.
The only house on Hazel, I know this.
I think you described it as that they were considered flag lots.
No, I just said they were never considered flag lots. And if you look at, we have many houses long before the 2016 change that were built on here, and the front was always the front here, and they're up and down all over the place, and if they were too narrow, they'd have to get a variance. I'm just saying, they're not considered flag.
Well, we're here for the variance because it's too narrow.
That's correct. When this was constructed, it was considered a
What I was saying is if the issue is the 18 feet in the back, we can probably make that bigger and make the front yard smaller. Because the front yard then has the width of the street before.
Where's the 18 feet in the back? Oh, this is different. So this plan is different than the survey?
See,
Yes. I guess, I don't know what that plan is.
Yeah. No, I just looking at this, that's the 19 feet, that's at 18 feet.
all right, we saw that before, once it's 18, once it's 19.
Right.
We go with the small one. So,
you're suggesting
So we could,
the whole house...
perhaps we could move the house 10 feet forward. Or we have 30 plus 18 is somewhat 50, so if we were 25 and 25.
50-foot wide house?
No. I'm saying we have 30-foot front yard and an 18-foot side yard, if we were to more balance it.
But the house is like 50 feet deep, looking at it. 51, 2, is that what I'm looking at?
That's
Huh?
Yep.
They're pretty narrow down in Palm Point.
What's that?
I said they're pretty narrow down in Palm Point.
Yeah, you know when you get,
Yeah, well, this is a long way from.
well,
This is as far as you can get from Palm Point.
And it's about
It is
6 times
about
bigger than the lot
yeah.
size, so. Well, the house has got some width there, but it's, the rest of the house is really a garage.
well, yeah, I understand all of that, but you can make it a little bit less intrusive on the neighbors, because there's some hiding there. It's more than 50-foot variance that's looking for the rear yard. You prefer to go back 10 feet, it's still 25%. My math is open up.
Well, if we saw, I'm talking about swapping 10 feet in the back to the front, because we do have the whole road. The architect is here, maybe she can talk a little bit about why the house.
The designer.
That'd be great.
Design, sorry.
Come on down, let's talk about this.
Yep.
Okay? Hey, she,
Nancy Dwyer.
Nancy, you've heard our concerns so far about this?
Yes, I have. What we can do is, this front roof line, it ties in, of the garage, it ties into the front porch. So, and that was the reason for shifting the garage towards the rear yard a little bit more. But what I can do is work off of the back roof line and shift the garage forward. And it will create, what I'm trying to do is maintain a courtyard in the front yard off of Morris Court. But in order to satisfy the rear property line, what we can do is just create a little bit of jog in the driveway and pull it towards the front. And then what we were also trying to do is, by keeping it closer to the rear yard, we were trying to maintain the integrity of a front yard setback. But if the board is willing to honor moving it closer to the street a little bit more to address the concerns of any neighbors in the backyard, I think that would work as well. We just have to be mindful of the septic system. We don't have too much room that we could move forward to Morris Court.
Nancy, how many square feet in the home?
The home is approximately 2,400 square feet, plus the garage. So overall, the
It's
house,
2 stories, though, right?
that's correct,
And it's
yes.
2,400, 2 stories?
Plus the garage, yes.
Okay. How many bedrooms?
4 bedrooms.
Okay.
So certainly the house is oversized for the property, it's a brick house.
And
Quarter of an acre roughly?
the way we did,
It's 18,000 square feet, almost half an acre.
the way we did originally present this on the lot was that it was basically turned so the house was facing west and facing Hazelwood as the front yard.
But it's not now.
Well, that's the intention. It is, but it's not at the same time because of the way we have the courtyard set up. The front door does actually
I see.
face Hazelwood.
I see what you're saying.
I see.
The garage faces Morris.
How far are we talking about if you were able to move the house forward? It's just, you're talking about offsetting the garage.
Well, if we offset the garage,
few feet
there's
there,
6
few feet here. I think we have to be mindful of the neighbors. I don't want,
If we offset the garage towards the front,
Right.
then we gain 6 feet in the rear yard.
okay?
And then if we move the house even closer to Morris, even if we move it 4 feet, then that's an additional 10 feet to the rear property line that we've just gained.
So now you're
20 feet, right?
29 feet and 20 feet to Morris.
Approximately, yeah.
No, we're only 4 feet closer to Morris, so we'd be
Oh, the garage.
26, because the garage is shifting within the
And the
envelope.
house could come down.
So the property that's to the west,
Yes.
that house is actually closer to Morris Court than what we're proposing to the middle, right? So
That was
character,
lot number 1 in the subdivision.
so character of the neighborhood, right?
This house that's directly opposite or directly south of us on this lot, on Morris Court, that house also, their front door faces Hazelwood. So we're kind of maintaining the same look of the neighborhood
This one.
and uses the eastern property side of the house as their rear yard.
I think you probably want us to take a look at this a little bit more.
I think so. I think so. And you understand our concerns with this. We haven't even heard from the neighbors.
Gives a lot of them.
I guess that's what everybody's here for. With the crowd.
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask one question on this? Because
Please.
I know the applicant wants to, give some character to the house, and that's important in the neighborhoods, but, for instance, a 30 by 40 colonial is 2,400 square feet, just as big as this, and if it was 30 foot deep, that would be 70 feet for the front and rear yard, a 40-foot conforming front and a 30-foot rear. Now, I'm not suggesting you build a box, but, and I understand you don't want to do that, but simply if you turn this the other way, and then you could still build off there with the garage and add character to it, it just seems as though you're doing something that's extremely deep, and that you could still get, a 30-foot wide house is a very wide, comfortable colonial, and you could still get something there and have as much as a 30-foot rear yard and a 30-foot front yard. A 40-foot front yard. It just seems as though by putting that, the way you're doing it with the depths, really,
Well, the house is 30 by 50.
Right, so the actual
The issue
bulk of
is
the
that
house
it's
is
just
just because
oriented.
we're
True, but it's
creating a
oriented.
separate mudroom and a garage, we're just trying to
Isn't there a
create.
way to keep some character in there and turn that into 30 by 40 and then do a porch and a connection to a garage? You'd still have plenty of room to do that.
So I think what Paul's saying too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the property, it's, I'm looking at different plans, but this is 45 feet, right, the house proper, right? And right now, the way it's sitting on the lot, it's kind of working against the lot, because the lot is wider than it is deep, right? Is that what?
Yes, right.
That's basically the same.
We could what you're saying is basically take this part of the house and turn it so that everything is running along to the house. And while that works for the setbacks, it doesn't necessarily work for the actual using the lot as a living space as a whole. Because what that would do is turn it so that where the pool is located, it's now connected to a bedroom and a bathroom, as opposed to creating it as an indoor-outdoor living space
We
on
haven't
the
gotten to
property.
the pool yet.
But that was the intention for why it's turned the way that it is.
I got it. And our job is to just try and work with you to minimize the variances
Sure.
that are necessary for this.
Yep.
So I think we'll
While
take,
keeping the character of the neighborhood.
While keeping the
We're not overbuilding, and I think that
I think
we'll come back and show.
I think that this is on Tom, I agree with you on that, yeah,
Okay.
you know?
Thank
I don't
you.
disagree with you on that one, that you're not overbuilding it, but it might be, you know what I would like to do right now? I'd like to take a minute, a couple of minutes, and listen to our neighbors that have sat through our hearing, and then you guys can come back.
Sure.
How's that sound?
It's fine.
Okay?
Thank you.
So, we have people in the audience, I'm assuming that you're all waiting to talk about this application. So, I would like, who would like to go first? Great, come on up here and,
So Mark Coles, I live at 6 Gourley Street.
okay.
So I live in one of the existing large structures in the neighbourhood.
Could you show us on this?
Yeah. I'm just off of the bottom here. This is 6, this is 3, and I'm adjoining here.
So you're on the,
I'm on the south side of Gourley Street, virtually identical lot. John Flores, I think, has submitted a letter. He's my neighbour, and we've spoken about this. Both of our houses are 2850 square feet. His has 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms. Mine has 5 bedrooms, 4.5 bathrooms. We think that that is kind of very large house for the lot. Maybe the plan's been updated here. What I saw on the planning file came out about 3,500 square feet for this house with the upper and lower level. Maybe it's been changed, I don't know, when I looked at.
You just probably heard the applicant say that their house is gonna be about 2,400 square feet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
Then plus garage, so that's,
That's
I'm not
correct.
counting
But then
that
how
as
does
a
that,
living space
how does that
as well.
tally with what's on the planning file right now? I look on the planning file, I see first floor main living room, 1580, first floor front entry porch, 247, second floor main living space, 1382,
where's this?
and the bonus room at 420 comes out 3629.
Because they're unfinished living spaces, those are just, they're remaining unfinished, uninhabitable spaces. Those additional areas.
Well, it sounds like you've got some
Why is
work
it
with them to make the house slightly smaller. Why do we need such big, large interior unfinished spaces? in that
Right,
house?
I guess you're quite a ways away, aren't you?
No, but the thing I'm concerned about, for instance, there's a lot behind me that they are trying to currently subdivide, right?
I don't know, they're trying to.
Yeah, they are. And
Okay.
you can be pretty sure that someone gets a variance to do this, they'll try the same right behind us. as
Well,
well.
that's a different issue as far as variances go.
Sure.
You're talking about, a planning board issue, dividing a piece of property or a variance? You're talking about dividing a piece of property or variance for?
No, dividing a piece of property, it's virtually identical lot to what
That's
52 was.
something different.
Yeah. But, I mean, when someone...
Okay, so your concern is about establishing precedent in the area? I
Yes.
just wanted to be
Yes.
clear on
Yes.
why you were here, I
Yeah,
guess.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, and so you think that this is too big a house?
I think it's too big a house for the lot. I think that when you look at 3 and 6 Gourley Street, that shows you how you can get nearly 3,000 square feet on a similar size lot. That has a 40-foot setback at the back. It has 32 on the front. The paper road was 40 feet. It's been finished to 20, which I believe now is the width that you're allowed to have a finished road. And so you essentially end up with a 40, 40, 15, 15. I think this house is very nicely done. I appreciate the character, and I think the development is to be applauded. But I think, actually, listening to you, there's some tweaks here. This can be made to work, and maybe it can be pulled forward a little bit. Maybe the house is too deep, it's 45 foot deep, maybe it can be shrunk a little bit.
Do you have, so your house, you're saying, is how many square feet?
28,
Yours is 28 square feet?
2850, yeah.
And you have a detached garage?
No, it's built in.
And that doesn't count the garage or space?
No, that
without-
doesn't count the garage and space in. And then if you look across, I've got,
So theirs is similar to yours in square footage, except for they're counting the garage?
yeah, and this is 6 Gourley Street.
No, but what I'm saying is it's very similar to your size, right?
Yeah, overall, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're much more within the boundaries within the setbacks and what this is. Just feel this house is sprawling. Okay, I think they've done a good job on the north side to stop overlooking when you're very, very close to the lot to the north. They've clearly built the house to look out where it's not going to affect the neighbours, but just concerned about that if this passes. There's lots of smaller houses in the neighbourhood. The economics would start working to knock them down and build something like this. So with some tweaking, I think it can work.
Well, you hear us working on it, right?
Okay, yep, good.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next neighbor, Nancy, can I ask you what this space, what is the floor space in the proposed house without the garage? So I'm hearing a couple of different.
On the first floor, we have 1380, and on the second floor, we have the 1380 and 1380.